Hi there. My name is Matthew Saunders, and I am in the process of doing a series of short videos, social media posts about neurodivergence called My Neurodivergent Brain. This one is the 11th in that series of videocasts, and it is called Imposter Syndrome. Now, if you look below on this slide, you'll see that there's a QR code and also a bit.ly link that will allow you to go directly to this series. So if you've missed any of them, you can go directly there, or you can subscribe to my channel. Love it if you'd also follow me on your favorite social media platform. On Twitter, I'm at Creech. On Mastodon, I'm also at Creech. So without any further ado, I would love to talk to you about imposter syndrome. When I finished high school, I wasn't ready to go to university. I wasn't mature enough. I didn't have enough self-awareness. High school had been very difficult. And while I never failed any classes, I had a hard time concentrating, and I was socially extremely awkward. I didn't understand people well, and they didn't understand me. I misread intentions, and I was often bullied. In the 9th grade, I was taped to the football goalposts 2 feet off the ground. Later during high school, my locker was broken into, and a snake, a couple of crayfish, and a fetal pig from the biology lab were left stinking of formaldehyde. That stigma that I talked about from junior high, where I had been part of both the remedial and the gifted and talented program, that stigma had followed me. And so I was alone. I was bullied, and I was largely without a tribe. So for me, every success since then has been colored with, someone's going to figure out that I'm worthless. For me, this is when imposter syndrome began. I was happiest when I was able to do things on my own, things that required repetitive actions. I excelled in art classes where repetition and techniques like cross-hatching were valued. I was able to express myself in some pretty bizarre ways, and rather than being frowned on for it, I received praise and good grades for my creativity. So I decided, with the help of my parents, to take a vocational art program for high school graduates after I graduated. And at the same time, I worked in a coffee shop, but I was really adrift. And neither my parents nor I had any idea of what was to come next. I half-heartedly engaged in that program and ultimately left it before the year ended. I only finished half of it. I was deeply sad. I felt like a fake, a fraud, and useless. But things were about to change. My father saw an advertisement in the local newspaper for a tiny liberal arts university in the eastern townships of Quebec. That school is nestled on the convergence of 2 rivers. It was established in 1843, and much of the architecture reflects its affiliation with Oxford and Cambridge universities. When we toured the school, it was immediately clear that this school's size, only about 1,700 students at the time, would be perfect for me. So I applied in fine arts and theater. I was accepted, and I received several scholarships, which seemed crazy to me at the time. And when I got into classes, my largest class was about 40 people, and my smallest was about 7. I will say that I started school feeling like a fraud, and I was just waiting for a teacher to call me out, for all of it to fall apart. I was waiting in the dorms to be bullied and shamed. But none of these things happened, and I flourished. High-functioning people with ADD and ADHD can do very well in the workplace, but undiagnosed, they might attribute symptoms to anxiety and depression. It can affect self-esteem. You can feel like you have character flaws that lead to feelings of shame. You can have a lack of confidence. You might get praised for how long and hard you work, but part of the reason that you're working long hours is to compensate for the inability to stay on task for longer periods of time. This can make you feel like a fraud, it can lead to to that feeling that somebody someday is just going to figure out that I'm faking it. Okay, this last video is really general advice. It doesn't just apply to those with learning disabilities exclusively. Even so, those of us with learning disabilities and mental health issues, it's doubly important for us. So after finishing my bachelor's degree, I moved back to Ottawa and I worked as a lighting tech at a local theater. And I realized while doing that lighting work that I didn't want to be a theater technician for my whole life. So I enrolled in a nonprofit management program at the University of Ottawa, which led to a job with an experimental dance company. I also applied to go to grad school in Virginia, moving all the way from Canada all the way down into the south of the U.S. to complete a Master's of Fine Arts. And originally I thought that I would be focused on arts marketing. But that job with the experimental dance company was curious, and I had no idea at the time, but it represented my first step to becoming a software technologist. And I did leverage what I learned at that place when I attended grad school. So this was 1995, and I was hired to work on the website, and I glibly said, sure, I can figure that out. I didn't have Google to Google what's a website. But I did know what the internet was because I was using Telnet to log into a crazy system called Lambda Moo, which is a giant freeform multi-user game, and I actually met my wife there. I asked a friend on Lambda Moo what this web thing was, and he was very helpful and pointed me to some helpful information. And suddenly, I was a webmaster, and I had no idea what I was doing. Even so, I'm sure most people were in the same boat. In 1995, after all, there were only 23,500 websites in the world. But one of the absolutely insane things that the company did that summer, remember this was back in 1995, was to collaborate in real time with multiple dance companies in different cities across Canada. They were working with the Canadian Broadcasting Company to do live feeds between different sites. So nobody had tried to do something like that before. Collaboration at distance with performers. And it blew me away. So when I arrived at Virginia Tech, I explained my experience that summer to my committee, and my committee was incredible and allowed me to gather together a coalition of different departments to experiment with bleeding-edge technology for my thesis work. So rather than researching arts administration, I produced 3 multimedia works, each layering on the previous, experimenting with the web, imagery, live-action theaters, streamed live feeds, pre-recorded video, all kinds of stuff like that. I had to learn how to code. I had to learn to manage people. I need to string together networks and learn video codecs, all kinds of interesting things. So, remember I talked about that my parents were told that I wouldn't learn to read or write. Well, that boy that wasn't supposed to learn to read or write had transformed into a technologist. And all of this led to my working with the university after graduating, teaching copyright law for nonprofits, videography, developing the first database-driven tourism website with the Virginia Tourism Board. This was way back in 1998. So, never be frightened to ask for what you need and want. The absolute worst thing that somebody could say to you is no. Don't be frightened to do bold and crazy things. Do something that takes you completely out of your comfort zone. And assume if you keep applying pressure to it, you can make it work. Be fearless. And don't let consequence of failure cripple you, because the real consequence of success can be life-changing. Thank you so much for watching this video. The next one is entitled Epilogue, and it will drop in just about a week. Yes, epilogue means it's the last in this particular series. I am working on other projects, though, so stay tuned for other videos around neurodivergence. Thanks a lot. See you next week.